Hello, everyone. Ever get that creeping sense that something's just not right? The kind that gives you goosebumps and makes the hair on your neck stand up? That's exactly the kind of night I'm having. My name's David Brown. I'm 46 years old, stand just under 6 feet tall at 5 feet 11 inches, and weigh around 175 pounds. I manage accounts at a large manufacturing firm, which keeps me busy most days. My wife, Elizabeth, though she insists on being called Liz, is also 46. She's 5 feet 6 inches and weighs about 130 pounds, with a figure that still makes heads turn. Tonight, in particular, she looked incredible in the dress she chose. Liz works in design and graphics at a major advertising agency here in Fort Worth. We've been married for 25 years, and our history goes way back. We grew up as neighbors, best friends since 4th grade. By high school, we were dating, and Liz was my prom date. That night marked a special milestone for us. It brought us even closer in ways we'd never been before. After high school, we both enrolled at the University of Texas and spent 3 years there. For the last two, we shared a cozy one-bedroom apartment, basically living together before we officially tied the knot. Our daughter, Sandra, is 21 and studying at the University of Oklahoma. Yeah, she ventured out of Texas. Traitor, right? Kidding mostly. She recently got engaged to Alan Thompson, a terrific guy from Oklahoma City. Alan comes from an affluent family. His dad's a big shot in an oil company based in Norman. Alan's 26, a bit older than Sandra, but his maturity shines through. He's absolutely smitten with her, and Liz and I couldn't be happier for them. Alan is studying business law, while Sandra's been exploring various classes, still undecided on a major. For now, she's enjoying life as a cheerleader and, let's be honest, spending my hard-earned money. Financially, we're doing well. Liz earns around $60,000 a year at her agency, and I bring in over $500,000 as an account manager. About 15 years ago, we stumbled across a foreclosed property on Lake Arlington. We paid $350,000 in cash, fixed it up, and now it's worth over $2.3 million. But let me get back to why tonight has me on edge. 3 days ago, Liz casually mentioned that her company was hosting a party on Saturday night. She gave me the rundown, then said, "David, I know these events aren't really your thing, and you'll probably be too tired, so don't feel obligated to come." That caught me off guard because I was actually looking forward to it. "No, Liz," I told her. "I've got the next few days off. I'd love to go." But over the next couple of days, she kept suggesting I didn't need to attend, almost as if she didn't want me there. Each time, I reassured her I was excited to meet her coworkers. When Saturday evening arrived, Liz looked breathtaking in a sleek black dress that hugged her figure perfectly. Her long blonde hair shimmered, and her blue eyes sparkled in the dim lighting of the venue. As soon as we stepped inside, I noticed a man, probably in his 50s, heading straight for her. Liz glanced his way, then quickly turned toward me, smiled, and planted a kiss on my cheek. It was subtle, but something about her body language put me on high alert. We shared a few drinks together, though I stayed sober, partly because I was driving and partly because I wanted to keep my wits about me. Not that I've ever doubted Liz's faithfulness. In 25 years, I've never had a reason to suspect her of cheating. But tonight, my unease wasn't about her. It was about this man. As the night went on, I overheard someone at our table mention his name, Marcus Smith. That name hit me like a brick. Marcus, as it turns out, is a senior sales rep at Liz's company. Every time Liz glanced his way during our dances, I'd catch Marcus staring right back. At one point, Marcus approached our table. Completely ignoring me, he asked Liz if she wanted to dance. The audacity! He didn't even acknowledge my presence, let alone ask if it was okay. My blood boiled. I clenched my fists under the table, ready to let him have it, but Liz intervened. She smiled sweetly and said, "All my dances are reserved for my husband." I saw a flicker of anger flash across his face before he walked off with another woman. Later, Liz asked for another drink, so I went to the bar. As I returned, I spotted Marcus standing in front of her. He was talking to her, and the expression on her face froze me in my tracks. Her eyes, those sad, almost pleading eyes, stopped me cold. I stayed hidden in the crowd, watching. Then I saw her lips move. "Sorry, baby." I've picked up a knack for reading lips over the years, and there was no mistaking what she said. Sorry, baby. Those words haunted me for the rest of the night. I stayed completely sober, every sense heightened. I couldn't help but notice how people were watching. Watching me, watching Liz, and keeping an eye on Marcus. It felt like there was an unspoken tension in the room, as if I was the only one not in on a secret. By the time we left, my mind was spinning. As soon as we got in the car, I couldn't hold back any longer. What's going on with Marcus? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though the hurt and suspicion were boiling just beneath the surface. Liz, who the hell is Marcus? The two of you seem to have some sort of connection. Are you cheating on me? I kept my eyes on the road, gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. The silence between us was suffocating. Finally, she sighed. Honey, Marcus is just someone I work with. I can't believe you'd even think that. I love you more than anything. Her words sounded right, but her tone felt wrong, like she was working too hard to sound convincing. I didn't push it any further that night, letting the tension hang between us. Liz knows me too well to think I'd ever tolerate infidelity. She's seen what I'm capable of when I've been wronged. Back in high school, there was this guy who used to bully me. I waited for the right moment, caught him after school, and taught him a lesson he'd never forget. By the time I was done, he was left humiliated, his pants stripped off and his pride shattered. Liz had my back the whole time, swearing to the teachers that I couldn't have done it because I'd been with her. She knows I'm not the kind of man who just lets things slide. If Liz was messing around, she knew there'd be hell to pay. But still, I couldn't shake that uneasy feeling. The way she looked at Marcus, the way she said, "Sorry, baby," those words were burned into my brain. Maybe I was overthinking it. Or maybe there was more going on than she was letting on. I decided I needed answers. I wasn't about to sit in the dark, letting doubt eat me alive. Liz has over $125,000 in her 401k, and I've got more than $1 million in mine. We had plenty to protect, and I wasn't about to let some office affair ruin everything we'd built. I hired a private investigator I knew to be discreet and thorough. It didn't take long for the detective to deliver. A stack of photos, videos, and even audio recordings. The evidence was undeniable, every detail laid bare. A few weeks later, Liz and I sat in our usual spots at the dining table, sipping our morning coffee like we'd done countless times before. It was time to confront her. So, Liz, I began, keeping my tone calm, you'd never cheat on me, right? Never have, right? Her eyes shot up to meet mine, surprise flashing across her face. No, honey, of course not. Why would you even ask that, David? Without saying another word, I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a thick manila envelope. I laid the photos on the table, one by one. The images spoke louder than any words ever could. The first picture showed her kissing Marcus outside a Motel 6. The next captured her walking into a room with him. Then came a shot of his car parked outside our home. But the real gut punchers came next. Liz straddling Marcus in my favorite recliner, the chair I sank into after long days at work. And finally, the most damning of all, the two of them tangled up in our bed. Liz's face turned ashen, her hands trembling as she reached for one of the photos. David, it doesn't mean anything, she stammered. I don't love him. It's just sex. I leaned in close, my voice cold and steady. It means everything to me, Liz. She looked desperate, grasping for some excuse. No, he's not better than you, David. He's not even as big. It's not about that. It's just different. Her voice cracked. That's all. We've been doing it for over a year. My temper flared. A year? I barked, louder than I'd intended. You've had a boyfriend for a year? She shook her head, looking insulted by the word. At work, we don't call it that, she said quietly. I'm his office wife. A lot of people at work do it, David. It's just part of the culture. I felt my jaw tighten, my fists clenching on the table. What? I growled, barely able to believe what I was hearing. Tears welled up in her eyes as she reached out for my hand, but I pulled away. You're not going to leave me, are you, David? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I leaned back in my chair, shaking my head slowly. Hell no, bitch, I spat. I'm not leaving. You are. Her eyes widened in shock, but before she could say a word, I dropped the final bombshell. I've already packed your clothes and personal stuff in your BMW. I want you out of my house. Now. When I grabbed her by the arm and escorted her to her car, her face was streaked with tears. She looked like a broken doll, but I felt no pity. This was her doing. Where will I go? She sobbed, her voice thick with desperation. I don't care, I said coldly. Go live with your office husband. A look of sheer panic flashed across her face. I can't go to him, she whispered. Marcus is married, with 3 kids. I already knew that, thanks to the PI's meticulous report. I had the names of his wife, his kids, and even their home address, but I wasn't about to let Liz know how much I knew. Let her squirm and figure out where she could go. Liz, I said, my voice low and sharp, I don't care where you end up. Go back to the Motel 6 if that's what you want, but get the hell out of here and stay out. She broke down, sobbing uncontrollably, pleading with me through her tears. David, are you seriously going to throw away 25 years of a good marriage? I stared at her, my expression cold and unmoving. No, Liz. It wasn't 25 years of a good marriage. It was less than 24 years of a good marriage and over a year of a lying, cheating one. You're the one who threw it away. Without another word, she climbed into her BMW, her face streaked with tears. The engine roared to life, and she sped off, leaving me standing in the driveway. For a brief moment, the thought crossed my mind of how empty the house would feel without her. But the anger quickly swallowed that thought whole. Later that night, just as I was beginning to relax, the phone rang. It was Sandra. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself before answering. Hi, Sandra, I said, forcing some cheer into my voice. How's everything going with the wedding plans? I was genuinely happy for her, despite the mess my life was turning into. I was paying for the big wedding she'd always dreamed of, and while she and Alan were doing most of the planning, it was my way of showing her how much I loved her. But instead of the excited chatter I was expecting, there was a long pause on the other end. My stomach knotted. Something was wrong. Dad, Sandra began hesitantly. I just got off the phone with Mom. She's crying and saying you threw her out of the house. What the hell is going on? It felt like a punch to the gut. The last thing I wanted was to drag Sandra into this mess, but now there was no avoiding it. Sandra, I said slowly, keeping my voice as calm as I could, your mother has been unfaithful. For over a year, she's been having an affair with someone she works with. Dad, grow up, Sandra snapped, her tone dripping with disdain. It's the 21st century. That kind of thing happens all the time. It's not a big deal if a woman gets some action on the side. Men used to do it constantly. I've never done it, I shot back, my voice hard with anger. And I sure as hell won't tolerate it. So tell me, Sandra, are you doing the same thing to Alan? Dad, that's none of your business, she replied sharply. Besides, Alan and I aren't married yet. What I do is my concern, not his. I was stunned. Who else in our family is doing this crap? Aunt Susan does, Dad. So what? My own family, a pack of cheaters. The realization made me feel sick to my stomach. Sandra, I said firmly, your mother isn't coming back here. And Marcus? He's not welcome anywhere near me, let alone at your wedding. Dad, you need to get over it, Sandra insisted. Let Mom come back home. Besides, Marcus is a great guy. Mom and I both want him involved in the wedding. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you serious? I asked, my voice rising. Have you all lost your minds? If you want Marcus at your wedding, let him walk you down the aisle, because if he's there, I won't be. I hung up before she could respond. The phone rang several more times that night, but I ignored it. I was done. 2 days later, Liz showed up at the house holding a piece of paper in her hand. A court order. Apparently, her so-called office husband had a top-notch lawyer, and she'd managed to secure a temporary order granting her the right to return home until things were settled. She had the audacity to stand there, calm as could be, trying to justify her actions. David, this hasn't affected our marriage, she said, her tone almost condescending. I've always been affectionate with you when you wanted it. I can keep being that way, but I don't see why I have to stop seeing Marcus. Her words left me speechless. She genuinely believed what she'd done didn't matter, that we could carry on like nothing had happened. You know damn well, Liz, I growled, barely containing my fury, that I'll never put up with a cheating wife. And as for your so-called affection, don't bother. I'll never touch you again. Keep the master bedroom. It's already tainted. I've been sleeping in the guest room ever since I found out what kind of person you really are. David, I am not what you're calling me, she protested, her voice shaking. I don't care what you want to call yourself, Liz, I snapped. It doesn't change anything. I'll be filing for divorce this week. But Liz wasn't giving up. David, I don't want a divorce, she said, her tone hardening. And you should know, Marcus and I have already talked to his lawyer. If you go through with it, I'll get the house and half of everything. You make more than I do, so I'll be entitled to alimony too. She gave me a cold smile. You might as well just accept it. Like Marcus says, this is your best option. Go to hell. Both of you. I spat, storming off to my room and slamming the door behind me. Hours later, near midnight, I heard a soft knock. I opened the door to find Liz standing there, tears streaming down her face. David, please, she sobbed. I'm sorry. I want us to work this out, but I also want Marcus. Her words hit me like a slap to the face. I couldn't decide whether to laugh or cry at how utterly absurd my life had become. The next morning, I made an appointment with one of our company lawyers. His evaluation was grim and only confirmed Liz's taunts. If we divorced, she'd get the house, half of everything. And with Sandra already grown and out of the house, there'd be no child support. To make matters worse, I'd be on the hook for about $125,000 a year in alimony. David, he said with a heavy sigh, there's no easy way around this. If you go through with the divorce, you're going to take a big financial hit. The days that followed were tense but quiet. Liz and I avoided speaking to each other entirely, the silence like a smothering fog. On the third day, she finally broke it. So, are you still foolish enough to pursue this divorce? She sneered, her tone dripping with contempt. My lawyer is still reviewing everything, I replied flatly, refusing to give her any satisfaction. Screw you, David, she hissed. I'll take everything you have. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I took a long drink from my beer and ignored her, letting her venomous words bounce off me. Later that evening, I noticed Liz on the phone in the dining room. She walked over with a smug expression and handed me the receiver. Someone wants to talk to you, she said, her tone triumphant. Hello? I said, pressing the phone to my ear. David, this is Marcus, came the voice on the other end. Listen, man, I get that you're pissed, but you need to just accept this and move on, cucky boy. Otherwise, we'll take everything you've got and make your life a living hell. You have no idea who you're messing with. I growled into the phone, my fury boiling over. You can keep her. I don't want her anymore. She's damaged goods. So, screw you, Marcus. I slammed the phone down, my hands trembling with rage. Turning to Liz, I stared at her in disbelief. How could she and Marcus be so foolish? I had all the evidence, photos, videos, even audio recordings, thanks to the private investigator. And speaking of audio, if they thought they were so clever, they clearly hadn't realized that conversations in my house and on these phones were still being recorded. The following week, Liz met up with her office husband 4 times, always at Motel 6. I'd made it clear that if she ever brought him back to our house, I wouldn't hesitate to take action. I think she finally understood I wasn't bluffing. Meanwhile, my company had been acquired by a larger firm based in Colorado. With the merger came changes, including the consolidation of roles. Ramon, a sharp young manager from Colorado, was being considered to take over my position. Although the company wanted to push me out, the union gave me some leverage. They were offering a buyout, $500,000 plus the conversion of my retirement into company stock. One evening, Ramon and I hit up a local strip club near the plant. Ramon frequented the place, having plenty of free time after his own divorce. Over drinks, we talked about life, and it was during one of these conversations that everything clicked. David, I know what you're going through, Ramon said. My ex took everything. Looking back, I wish I'd sold it all or given it away before the divorce. then just disappeared. Ramon, I said, finishing my beer, you might be the smartest guy I know. That night, as I drove home, I realized Liz wasn't there. She didn't come home at all. I figured she was with Marcus again, and to my surprise, I didn't care. At one point, I had loved Liz more than anything, but now all I felt was bitterness and hatred. Sunday rolled around, and I was watching football when Sandra called. "Dad, are you ready to move past all this anger?" she asked, her tone exasperated. "What do you want, Sandra?" I replied, already bracing myself. "Mom wants me to talk to you about the wedding," she said. "What about it?" "Well, Mom and I think Marcus should be part of it too. Maybe he could walk up the aisle behind you and me, then sit down when we get to her." "Sandra, is that really what you want?" "Yes, Daddy. I think it's best for everyone. You're my father and Mom's husband, but Marcus is her office husband. It makes sense for him to be there." I sighed, the weight of her words settling over me. "Sandra, I have a better idea. Why don't you let your office dad walk you down the aisle?" "Because I won't be there." "Dad, don't be ridiculous," she snapped. "Alan doesn't like it either, but he'll get over it by our wedding night." "Sandra, I wish you a good life, sweetie. Bye." "What does that mean, Dad?" she demanded, but I hung up without answering. I sat there for a long moment, tears welling up in my eyes. When Liz finally came home that night, she asked, "Did you miss me?" "Honey, I will never miss you," I said coldly. "Go somewhere and die." She ran to her room, crying, but I felt nothing. On Monday morning, I accepted the buyout offer. $500,000 was transferred into an offshore account, along with a year's salary. With the house and cars already paid off, my next stop was the bank. I arranged to borrow $2 million against the house, which was valued at $2.3 million, and $40,000 against Liz's BMW, worth $45,000. The goal was simple: put as much debt in her name as possible. The tricky part would be getting Liz to sign the paperwork, but I'd find a way. Afterward, I canceled all my credit cards, ensuring no further wedding expenses would be charged to me. I called the wedding planner to inform her of the change. "Well, Mr. Brown," she asked, "then who will be paying for the wedding?" "Tell Sandra to ask her new dad, Marcus, for the money," I replied coldly to the wedding planner. Back at the office, I got to work crafting some fake life insurance policy applications, each for $1 million in coverage on myself. Later that evening, I called Liz. She sounded surprised to hear from me. "Liz, if you're not with Marcus tonight, how about we have a nice dinner?" "That sounds great," she said eagerly. "I'm so happy you're moving past all this. Where do you want to go?" "The Italian place downtown, under the lights." "How does that sound?" "That sounds so romantic, darling," she replied, her voice dripping with excitement. "Maybe you'll get lucky tonight, David." "I'm hoping for a lot more luck than you might think, Liz," I said. We had dinner, and Liz, already in high spirits, tried to kiss me during the meal. I gently told her, "Later." Then, I casually brought up the insurance policy. I told her it was for a cool million, suggested by my company, with her as the beneficiary. "Isn't your sister Susan a notary?" I asked. "Yes, David, she is," Liz replied. "Perfect," I said. "We need to sign these in front of a notary. Let's head to her house tonight and get it done. After that, we can celebrate." "Okay, David. Let's go," she agreed enthusiastically. After dinner, we drove to Susan's house. Liz, tipsy after 6 glasses of wine, signed and notarized all the papers without question. She was too happy about the evening to bother reading what she was signing. As I've said before, it was a stupid move on her part. The next day, I rushed the signed documents to the mortgage company and bank. The $40,000 loan was approved quickly, but the $2 million loan would take about a week to process. I arranged for the funds to be transferred to my offshore account once finalized. A week later, I wrapped up my time at the company. On my way out, I stopped at the Ford dealership and traded in my truck for a brand new F-350, paying in cash. Then, I visited the bank, closed all our credit cards, drained the savings, and emptied the checking accounts, leaving just $1,000 behind. To cover my tracks, I had a friend move the offshore funds into separate accounts. The next steps were harder, knowing they'd hurt innocent people. I met with Alan, my future son-in-law, and laid everything out. How I'd cut off the wedding funds and my concerns about Sandra's infidelity. I handed him audio recordings of my conversations with Sandra. Alan was crushed. Next, I visited Marcus Smith's house. His wife, a classy woman in her 50s, answered the door. I couldn't help but wonder how Marcus could betray someone like her. I handed her the videos, pictures, and audio recordings. She was in tears but thanked me, saying this wasn't the first time he cheated, but it would be the last. She was a major shareholder at the advertising agency Marcus worked for, so I had no doubt this would affect more than just their marriage. As for Liz, I couldn't help but wonder how she'd manage her $900 a month car payment and $16,000 a month mortgage without my income. Maybe her office husband could help out. With my plan in motion, I picked up a 36-foot fifth-wheel RV from a dealership, paying cash. I registered both the RV and the truck under my cousin's name, along with 3 credit cards. My goal was to head to Florida, lay low for a few years, and wait for Liz to file for divorce on grounds of abandonment. 1 year and 3 months later, a lot had changed. Marcus ended up divorced, and his ex-wife took everything: house, 60% of their assets, and $60,000 a year in alimony. He lost his job but landed a position at one of the last Blockbuster video stores as a tape rewinder and DVD cleaner. He now lives in a tiny apartment above an adult store. Liz's situation wasn't any better. The mortgage and car payments piled up. She'd always believed the house was paid off, but she had no idea about the loans. Eventually, she lost both the house and the car. With her credit in ruins, she couldn't find a decent apartment and ended up taking a waitressing job at a Denny's along the interstate. She filed for divorce, citing abandonment, hoping to secure welfare benefits. But with no way to locate me in time, she ended up with a no-fault divorce just to qualify for assistance. Sandra never married Alan. He confronted her with the recordings, and she tried to downplay everything, calling it no big deal. It was the same excuse Liz had used. Alan called off the wedding, cutting Sandra off from his family's wealth. Now, Sandra lives in a 2-bedroom apartment in a rough part of town with Liz. From what I hear, they're spending a lot of time together. Whether dating is the right term, I don't know, but the men showing up every night and handing over $20 bills says enough. As for me, I'm living the good life in sunny southern Florida. The weather's perfect, the bikinis are plentiful, and I've got a fantastic job with one of the big 5 companies. Life couldn't be better. Subscribe so you don't miss new stories on the channel. Bye.